This idea that I got to get on top of you and dominate you in order to put things right, but that just creates new domination, which creates new oppression, which creates new area for domination, until eventually the whole thing falls apart. I mean, when you look at the end of the Bible, the whole thing really does fall apart. All of power has gone corrupt and crazy and angry and vicious until the whole thing explodes on itself. All right, well, I don't know why we didn't like my falling apart whiteboard that was positioned on a chair, but I got home recently and this beautiful whiteboard was just sitting on my back porch as though somebody wanted to say something. Thank you very much, Joel. With that being said, I'll use it just a little bit today so that you can enjoy my usual art. But first, let's hop into our liturgical passage of the day. Everybody's favorite about loving your enemies goes a little something like this in Luke 6, starting in verse 27. Jesus is preaching the longest passage or the longest message in the Bible, which scholars typically think that your Bible writers took so many of the teachings that Jesus had given throughout time and then just kind of arranged it in a perfectly flowing message for the Sermon on the Mount. Whether that's true or not, who knows? But this is the kingdom of God that is different than the kingdom of this earth and operates different than the ways that we are used to it operating. And amongst the differences of that operation, Jesus says this, I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. To one who strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. From one who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Give to everyone who begs from you, and from one who takes away your goods, do not demand them back. And as you wish that others would do to you, do so to them. If you love those who love you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those to whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to get back the same amount. But love your enemies and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. And your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. Let me say that again. He is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. Be merciful, even as your Father is merciful. When Jesus is proposing a different world to live in, it's almost like the kingdom of heaven is so lofty, it's in the clouds, right? It's up there somewhere, because heaven in their mind would have been like the skies. So when Jesus is saying, like, love those who hurt you, that's so foreign to the way that we think and believe that it might as well be otherworldly. It might as well be out in outer space somewhere, some other planet that got it right. And Jesus is like, yes, I come from that place, not some other planet. This is not some weird kind of cult thing. I come from some other place. I come from heaven with a different kind of kingdom that works differently. And that is what I'm calling you into. Not to wait until the resurrection comes where everybody's suddenly at peace and now you can just easily get by peaceably with each other. No, I'm calling you to usher in peace into the world right here, right now, even when the rest of the world is not being peaceable with you. And this becomes a dynamic in which we need to really lean into with the Holy Spirit, because there are times where if we were to just live peaceably while people are abusing us, we would find ourselves in a really unhealthy space that Jesus is not trying to create for us. So like I've seen people wield these passages in horrible ways. That if somebody is dealing with domestic abuse, someone might take this passage from Jesus and be like, well, let them hit you again. It's like, no. This is not what Jesus was getting at. There are people whom I have lent money to over and over and over again, and they now have hundreds, thousands of dollars of my money and are not getting anywhere better. And I have to step back and kind of be like, this is not what Jesus intended with this kind of parable either. At the same time, those times where I've given the money, I know that's like reward in heaven. That's something that God has seen and he cares about, and that I don't need to worry about it because I've left that with him. This kind of world that Jesus is calling us into is not one that works the way that this one does. Because when you have a problem in this world, you tend to overcome it the same way that people have always overcome it, which is with domination. So let's say that this is your oppressor right here. Yeah, this dot that I've just drawn here. Let's say that this is your oppressor. And you're stuck below your oppressor, and you can't get anywhere because your oppressor is ungrateful and is evil, and he does not care about you. And you might go up to your oppressor and be like, you know what? I forgive you. You know what your oppressor might say back? I don't care. Which helps us recognize forgiveness is not always about the other person. It's actually often about you. Forgiveness is healthy for you because your oppressor may not care about your forgiveness. But when you come to this thing that's dominating you, it's a system, it's a worldview, it's a person, it's a government. You could put 100 different things on what an oppressor could be. When you come before that oppressor, here's the way that the world teaches you to fix it. Get on top of them. Dominate them back. Use violence, use force, kill them. Like the list goes on as to how far people will go to say you should fix oppression. And we glorify it in our movies. We glorify it in our books and our stories. All throughout history, this has been the system that we have taught. But what happens when you do this? To get on top of the oppression, you have actually created a higher bar of oppression. Now you're finally in charge, and that old form of oppression has been is pushed under you, and you have overwhelmed it, and you are now on top. But you've set the bar higher, and you've come into this with so much pain, so much unforgiveness, so much hurt, that without noticing it, you have now become the new oppressors. Because you can only get to this state through the means that this world has used over and over again. Violence, hate, corruption, pain. You did not try to get on the level of your oppressor. You did not try to love. You did not try to find a middle ground and bring restoration. You just tried to overcome. And that can create a whole new system. And now you say to yourself, we used to be on the bottom, now we're on the top, and now we can do things right and put things exactly as they need to be. But once you've already done this, the things that are in your mind from all the bitterness and hatred and pain that you start to put in place in the world, it actually creates not just a new kind of oppression, but an even darker, deeper kind of oppression. And now, what's happened is the people who were oppressed before you, the people that oppressed you are now the ones being oppressed. They now have to create a new uprising because you've become corrupt. And they have to set the bar even higher as to what is righteous, what is justice. And they've had to become even more bitter towards you to get to this point, even more hateful towards you to get to this point. And now they are on top and in charge. And then you have the next one rise up. No. That's not the way it goes. And then you have the next one rise up. No, that's not. And you get the system. So what Walter Wink, a really great theologian that I really like, he's got a whole trilogy of scholarship called the Powers. He looks at the way in which the false gods work throughout the Bible. He looks at the way in which the enemy, both in the spiritual realm and in the physical realm, work. And he calls it this domination system. This idea that I got to get on top of you and dominate you in order to put things right, but that just creates new domination, which creates new oppression, which creates new area for domination, until eventually the whole thing falls apart. I mean, when you look at the end of the Bible, the whole thing really does fall apart. All of power has gone corrupt and crazy and angry and vicious until the whole thing explodes on itself. It is no wonder that when you get to the Sermon on the Mount and all the other teachings of Jesus, that it doesn't sound like this at all. Because as someone from the other side looks at the way in which the false gods have been working, looks at the ways in which the demons have been working, and the ways in which humans have partaken with that mega demon known as capital S sin, this being, this creature. As Jesus looks at the way in which sin has corrupted all these things, Jesus has to propose an entirely different way of going about it. What do I do back here with this person who's oppressing me? Jesus comes along and he says, you know what God does? He loves them. Whoa, hold up. I don't want to love them. That wouldn't fix my problems at all. And Jesus pushes back and says, are you sure? Jesus proposes a kind of pacifism, and I'm careful with that word. Yes, I am a Jesus-minded pacifist. But when people hear the word pacifism, they often think like, let people just tread on you, destroy you, and do whatever they want to you. And that's not really what Jesus is proposing here. Jesus is proposing something strategic to overcome sin, something that interrupts this flow, something that throws the whole thing off. So when you have that first time where this person comes and wants to oppress you and they say, hey, give me your shirt. I cannot even draw simple things, just to be clear, all right? When he comes along and says, give me your shirt, the natural way in which you want to respond is to, oh, I'll punch you in the face, don't you dare. But Jesus instead goes, you know what? What else you got? Why don't you also, he said tunic, but we don't wear those. Why don't you just give him your pants as well? Well, what kind of response is that? Why would I give the person my pants and my shirt? And Jesus' response would be like, you just interrupted the usual flow. This person's expecting you to be angry. This person's expecting you to react the way that they always make people react, and they want you to be angry. They're not wanting your shirt out of kindness. They're already attacking you. But when you interrupt it and you're like, oh yeah, you need a shirt? Here's my shirt. What else do you need? Pants? You need my shoes? Can I keep my underwear? You know, like whatever the case might be with this conversation right here, you've interrupted it. You've thrown the whole thing off. This is how it always goes. And suddenly, from the get-go, it's not going that way anymore. And that may backfire on you. They may also want your pants or your tunic. But you've already changed the game in that response. Jesus is being wise about the way in which he's being pacifistic. Did they slap you? Well, turn the other cheek. Not because Jesus is like, abuse, I love it, bring it on. No, he was bleeding out of his forehead thinking of the abuse that was coming before him on the cross. He's not masochistic. He's not looking for that kind of thing. But he knows when to embrace it at the right time when it can create righteousness and it can throw off the whole system. But the reason you might turn the other cheek is because who has the audacity to slap you and you be like, this is the other side, would you like to go again? You've interrupted the system. They don't know how to slap you again. I mean, they might slap you again. I'm not saying that they won't. But like you've thrown it off. You've changed it. You're no longer just getting into your amygdala, this alarm system in your body that keeps heightening it. When the alarm system goes off, it's fight or flight. Like it's trying to get you in the mode to survive. And Jesus is calling you to overcome that with his spirit, to react in a different way. Don't get caught in the amygdala. Get caught in the Spirit of God. And when you do that, your responses will be different, which will continue to bring down the heightening of this. And if you're lucky, you'll do what Martin Luther King Jr. always hoped to do, to win over the people that you are trying to interrupt. So if this was MLK, the way in which he would do it is he would come out with his pacifistic ideas to interrupt the flow. He intentionally looked for crowded cities because he was trying to raise a ruckus. He did not want to go to small areas where it wouldn't be a big deal. He wanted news outlets to show up. He wanted to put oppression on the screens of people at home so that when marches started and they pacifistically just walked through and let people hurt them to show the world this is what we go through every day, well, the world didn't know what to do with that. They watched that on TV and said, this is wrong. How have we been letting this go on for this long? Something has to change. And what Martin Luther King did through this pacifistic, kingdom-minded, Jesus-interrupted strategy is he took the oppressors who now had their hearts warmed, and guess what they did? They came to the same level. They joined the fights. The people who didn't care before suddenly started to care. The people, perhaps, who were hardened about racism at the time suddenly see it in its full capacity and say, that's me, I'm like that. Why am I like that? And he grows his ranks. Hey, you want to overcome the armies that you're up against? Then make your opponents your friends. What happens is your army grows. It's kind of a different way of bringing about the opponent's downfall, is to bring them to your upwards movement. That was part of what MLK would do. He would say, even when you hurt us, we will love you. We will always choose love. Love is our answer. We don't default to other kinds of ideas. Love, love, love. Love does not mean that, like, I'm okay with how you hurt me. Love does not mean that it's okay how you hurt me. Love means that instead of getting caught up in the domination system that sin is inviting me into, I'm going to get caught up in Jesus. And that when people try to hurt me, I will find a different way of interrupting. And I can't guarantee you that it will always work, but it's a strong seed that you will plant. I've shared this story before, but I had a very close friend who got very upset with me, and we could not restore the relationship. And I had given up entirely. I had tried over and over again, and one night I was sitting on the front steps of my house, and I just said, God, there's nothing I can do. And when I finally gave up in that moment, I had this sudden reminder of this passage. Well, Jamin, have you tried doing what I preached? No, I've tried confronting it. I've tried having meetings. I've tried meetings with more people to get into the conversation. I've done the things you preached. Okay, Jamin, but did you try the other things I preached? Have you blessed your enemies? No, not that one, you know. But then I suddenly had this just easy resolve, like, no, I haven't done that one yet. Okay, that's what I'll do. And it wasn't like a sweating, I can't believe I'm about to make this decision. It was a simple resignation to the kingdom of heaven. No, I haven't tried that one. What's the plan? Well, bless your enemies. An old enemy of yours, Jamin, you started praying for them. Remember how that changed your heart? Oh, yeah. Okay, this time buy your enemy gifts. So every day of the week, I sent a gift, I sent a gift, I sent a gift. And it restored the relationship for 1 week. And then it fell apart. But after time had settled and the dust had come off of it, we were restored again. Now, I don't think we would have had the later restoration if I hadn't followed the seeds of the kingdom of heaven earlier on. I think the story would be different. So, there's a story right there. I followed the kingdom of heaven, and it both didn't work and did work. We are used to telling stories like this, where things just get more and more oppressive and painful. If I was in charge, I could get it right. If I was in charge, then things would go the way that things are supposed to go. And Jesus instead is calling everybody to be on the same level. Why? Because you are made in the image of God. You know, the other ancient religions thought that only kings were made in the image of God. That they were the only ones that could actually convey what God is like because God had put them in charge. But the Hebrew Bible does something different. When it starts, everyone is in the image of God. And when they make babies, they make more things that are in the image of God. And it doesn't matter what your race is. It doesn't matter what your gender is. You are all the image of God, and therefore you are all on the same level. And the kingdom that Jesus tries to bring about is one that is trying to put things on the same level. He elevates women everywhere he goes. He takes care of the poor. His ministry is especially to the poor and those who need liberation. So he's always down here trying to pull people up to where they belong. And he recognizes that these things are going to oppress him. The stuff that's higher up, they will oppress him. But if they're going to do things right, hopefully, they will also get on the same level. Now, someone might come along and be like, well, some people are anointed. That doesn't make them higher in personhood. That just creates like leadership skills within them to lead everybody who is on the same level as them. Jesus spends his time pulling the lowly up. But he doesn't spend his time pulling the high down, because they're the ones that have to make that decision to come down. You know what Jesus does to the people at the highest heights? Jesus throws off the whole system. He goes on the cross and he invites all of this oppression to come straight to him. That's exactly what they do. He interrupts the flow. Rather than say, I could call down legions of angels right now and kill you all, which he could have done. He recognized that himself. Rather than say that, Jesus said, I'm choosing a different route. I will rise to the top by going to the most lowly place imaginable. And he interrupts. And then the ways of the kingdom of heaven happen exactly as he says that they would. That the lowly are the exalted ones. That the ones at the bottom are the ones who are first in heaven. He interrupts the whole thing, and it skyrockets him past sin all the way to the top. And throughout that entire effort, he never participated with sin. He got on top through interruption. He got on top through a different way, through a kingdom-minded way. He never had to ask sin to help him. But sin asked. Sin wanted to partner with him. When Jesus was in the desert, Satan kept saying, hey, I know a way that you can have the whole world. I know how you can get on top. It's the same thing we always do, the domination system. I can get you there. I'm in charge of that thing. I am the cog that makes that machine run. Jesus, you want to be in charge of the world? Follow me. I know how it works. And Jesus says no. But Satan keeps tempting. Peter comes up to Jesus. After Jesus knows that he's going to die on the cross, Peter comes up to Jesus and says, no, you're not going to die. And Jesus' response to Peter is what? Get behind me, Satan. I see the work of the domination system in you, Peter. I have a way to overcome it, and you are offering me another idea, just like Satan did in the desert. And then Jesus ends up in the Garden of Gethsemane. It is not an accident that he is in a garden. This is his moment where he can eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil that Satan is offering, or he can do it the right way. And he sweats blood trying to figure it out. But in the end says, not my will, but God's will be done. And he follows through with the kingdom heaven-minded strategy. Throws the whole thing off. Now there is probably somewhere in your life today where you are still practicing the old strategy. There is someone who is hurting you that you are trying to get on top of. There is someone who hates you that you hate back. And some of you might say, no, I love my enemies. But that doesn't mean that you actually don't hate them. When I went down to the Asbury revival, there was a guy on the street yelling at people, and someone was just yelling back, you know what? I love you, you jerk. It's like, it's not love, bro. You can't just change the word hate to love and pretend that exists in your heart. You gotta figure out a different system. I love you. How's that feel? In your face. Throw the whole thing off. And what that's going to look like for you, if you want the prime example of the thing that throws the whole thing off, I hate to say it, but it's the cross. It's that thing that Jesus promised you would pick up if you're going to follow him. There will be pain, there will be hurt, and there will be strategy. I want to make sure, again, if you're in an abusive situation, Jesus is not teaching you to stay in abuse. Are we clear? But he is teaching you a strategic way to overcome the oppression that is in your life. To not partner with sin with the old way, but to partner with Jesus through the cross. That interrupts, confuses, and even Satan doesn't get it, and suddenly he realizes his whole kingdom is over.